Hello, I'm Leslie Hardy, and it is truly my honor to be here today with the one and only Mr. Timothy Stewart, who's going to share with us just some incredible information that I think is going to be impactful to not just me, but to the masses. And so we're going to jump right into it, right, Tim?
Absolutely, let's do it.
Okay.
Dr. Leslie Hardy.
So why don't you just share with us who are you? Who is Tim?
Okay. Tim Stewart, aka TalkManTalk's,
TalkManTalk's?
speaking to inspire. I'm originally from North Carolina. I grew up on a 500-acre farm,
Wow.
and so hard work. I started that like from the womb, and I grew up on the farm, and that lifestyle was very normal, right? We weren't connected to a lot of public outside of our community. So we were, in that culture, we were raised in that culture. And then once I graduated high school, and I had been introduced to what it was like to live in the city, but I left and went in the military, went in the Air Force, and got a chance to travel around the world. And I saw a lot of different cultures, and and bringing it more specifically to the purpose of why we are here today is, I want to kind of talk about what it was like growing up on that farm and going to church, right? And I do want to preface this this presentation, this interview. I want people to know that it is not my intent to be offensive. I may say some things that may not resonate with everybody, but my goal and my purpose is to share my story. This is just my story. That doesn't make someone else's story be incorrect or wrong, or my story be right. It's just my story. And, I want to talk about that transition and how things happen for me. But yeah, I'm a country boy.
Okay, yeah, 500 acres, that's a lot of land.
Yeah.
Most people, at least that I know, would not even be able to conceptualize 500 acres growing up on 500 acres.
And it was a lot.
That is a lot. That is a lot. So you said that, I guess church was an important part of your upbringing.
It was, but I didn't realize the impact that it had on my life until much later, if that makes any sense. Yeah, we went to church every Sunday.
Yeah.
We went to Bible class. My mom had me singing in the choir. Dust coming up out the floor. We stomping dust, right? And I didn't realize how my mind was being transformed based on what was happening, at the church.
I love it.
Religion. I grew up in a religious type of culture.
So let's pause right there. And I want you to share with us, what do you mean when you say religion? Define that. Because people have their own ideas of what that is. You're in the South. We're in the South.
Yeah.
So, we're known as the Bible Belt.
Yes.
And so there are a lot of thoughts that people have, doctrines that people have. So when you say religion, what do you mean by religion?
Great question. So when I say religion, the definition is a controlling power, a superhuman controlling power, a belief in gods, or a god or gods. It's the belief in a superhuman controlling power known as God or gods. It's a set of rituals and traditions that people live their lives based on. Now, if you had asked me that 30 years ago, I probably would have had a different definition. I probably wouldn't even have known how to define it. But I've done some research, right? And, religion, in all terms, from the original word, means to search. It means to search for God. So that's what I mean when I say religion. It's a set of doctrines, traditions, and rituals that are man-made.
So I think it's important that you make that distinction.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes. I want to make sure that that's clear, that for me, religion is a man-made concept.
Okay. All right. And so when you talk about religion and just, sharing with us who you are, how has religion or how had religion impacted you and your story?
Well, as I said, we were taking the church, and what I saw in the church, Leslie, was I saw people live a different lifestyle, right? Because,
What does that mean?
okay, I'm going to explain. Great question. On that farm, not only did we have the land, but we had a grocery store. We had a little kitchenette. Down the hall was a club, and then behind that was a motel in one building.
Okay.
And so my grandfather was well known. He sold liquor, right? He did.
Yeah, look at house.
Yeah, he did. In a respectful way, right? And people came out to the club. Everybody, a lot of people, it was a very popular club. And I saw people who were in church on Sunday morning praying. I just saw them at the club, drunk, helping them get in their car, right? So I'm like, okay, this church thing, religion thing, it really don't really mean a lot, right? It's just something people do. It wasn't like this was something that was supposed to teach me how to live my life. It was just something that people did, right? I can remember, one of the head deacons who was, and I'm not judging him, right? He was an alcoholic. And he would come out to the store, and I would literally, on Friday nights, have to help him to his truck because he couldn't walk. And he was getting ready to drive. And Sunday morning, he's in the deacon stand praying his behind off. Mm-hmm. So, church really didn't mean nothing to me. They got drunk just like everybody else. Huh. Okay. And then back then, in the Bible bit, when we came out of church, people stand outside smoking cigarettes, right? That was very common. Well, as I, kind of learned, cigarette smoking is not healthy.
Well, there are a lot of things that are healthy.
Right.
But eating isn't healthy.
And that's true too, but I'm just saying, things have changed now. You don't see that. You don't see people, and religion has changed over the years, right? What I've seen in my experience, you don't see people standing out in front of the church smoking like you did 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean by man-made, right? Because in my mind, God doesn't change.
True. Well, that's the word.
Yeah. And so, I when I left home, I kind of got away from,
Now, how old were you when you left home?
18.
Okay.
I signed up, back to that farm. I signed up to go away 6 months before I graduated high school.
Yeah, you were ready.
I'm getting away from here. Y'all don't work for snot out of me. Seriously, we worked. Have you ever seen a turkey house? So a turkey house is a house that you raise turkeys. They come in as biddies, and you raise 3,000 turkeys in the house. And every day you have to go through and pick up the dead ones. And if you miss one sometimes, because the turkeys are all over the place, and you may miss one for a couple of days, and you come back, he may be rotten. Now you got to scoop him, it was nasty, right? Then we had hog house. We had 2 hog houses. It was just a lot of work. So yes, I had, some family in New York. My grandfather also owned the business, started a grocery store in New York. And so I got to go to New York and see people live a different lifestyle. They were driving bright, shiny cars. They had a lot of money in their pocket. City life. And they had pretty women. Right? That's what I wanted. Man, I didn't want to be in no stinking turkey house. And there was, a lot of times back then, a lot of people came for holidays like Thanksgiving, and we had to work, and my cousins would come home and they would be having like Saturday morning breakfast. We had to come in. They were sitting out eating breakfast, and they would put us in a different section to eat because we had come out of the turkey houses and we were smelling like turkeys. Right? That was embarrassing. And so, but when it came to the religion, For instance, I remember very vividly, one of the things that I questioned is when I left home was, why did they take us to the church to search for Easter eggs that a bunny rabbit laid? Rabbits don't lay eggs.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you do that? Why? Because I believed that at one point, that the rabbits had laid these eggs out here for us to go find them. Why would you do that? Right?
You also need to tell God.
For a lot of years I did, right? And then I found out probably about 10, 12 years old, wait a minute, hold up.
Yeah.
There's something right here. But that was the culture that we were raised in. Mm-hmm. And so my transition, I went on for many years of my life. And, I've shared my story with you, how I became addicted to drugs and alcohol. And for a lot of years of my life, I functioned as a functional addict, right? And then until I became dysfunctional, where I was no longer a responsible, productive member of society. And I went through treatment 12 times. And it was that.
So when you say treatment, what does that mean?
Rehab. I went to rehab, saying, hey, I want to quit. Show me, I'm done. And I could stop. Mm-hmm. I could stop for periods of time, but I couldn't stay stopped, mm-hmm. right? And I would go back. And I found out later on why that was, but in that 12th rehab list was a pivotal point in my life. I got hurt. I was so hurt. I had left New York because my mom told me she had bought a $10,000 insurance policy to bury me with because I wasn't going to make it. Mm-hmm. And I said, maybe I need to do something different here. So I said, let me just go to the other side of the world. And I bought a one-way ticket to California, got scared, and got off the bus in St. Louis. And I had never been there. I didn't know a soul. When I landed in St. Louis, I had 2 pair of pants, 2 shirts, and $8 in my pocket. At 40, I'm starting all over. Now, I'm in a homeless shelter at 40 years old. I've been in the Air Force. I've worked for corporate America. Something is wrong, right? And I had to stay in the homeless shelter for 2 weeks before bed became available for me at the Veterans Center. And when I landed at the Veterans Center, they took me in the chow hall, and I broke down, and I started crying. And then I got mad, and I said, God, and I hit my hand on the table. I said, God, why do you let this continue to happen to me? Why? I've been in the church, you know what I'm saying? People don't tell me, you're going to be a pastor. You're a pastor. I can't even tell you how many times people say, you're a pastor. No, I'm a drug addict, right? And I had this revelation. And to me, it was a revelation direct from God. I had never really experienced this. My nana was a Pentecostal, and I go back to that. My mom was a Baptist, my other grandmother was a Methodist. So this religious thing, it was just whatever you choose. You can do whatever you like. My other grandmother, she was in the church, and she was a mean person, very mean, right? Loving and caring on Sunday, but treacherous on Monday, right? And so, but I still had this concept of God, right?
What was your concept of God?
This big guy in the sky. Mm-hmm. This big guy in the sky who was watching over me, and if I didn't do the right thing, I was going to hell. Mm-hmm. That was my understanding of God.
So like a master.
Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my grandfather was, a very different kind of guy. His father was a white guy, a very wealthy white guy. That's how we wind up with all the land, right? And, he taught us that a man will work for what he wants. Anything that you wanted, you could work and get it. It had nothing to do with God giving it to you or, praying and something happening. If you wanted something, you could work and get it. That's why I've never been fired from a job today. Right? I've always overachieved. But in this 12th rehab, when I hit my hand on the table and I said, God, wow, I mean, Leslie, I was in a lot of pain, man, emotionally. It wasn't like I had not been homeless before, because I had been homeless before. But now I'm 1,200 miles away from all of my family. I don't know anybody. I don't have anything. I'm embarrassed, right? My family has stood by me through 11 other rehabs, and they had enough, right? I've gone through a divorce. I'm separated with my daughter. I've had another daughter that, I don't have any contact with her. And I was ready to die, right? And it was really my oldest daughter that gave me the courage, to say, let me give it one more short shot. She was the motivation. Because I didn't want her to grow up and people say, your dad's a crackhead. For some reason, I just didn't want that. And so when I hit my hand on the table, I got this revelation that drugs and alcohol are not your problem. And I'm getting there to your question. And I was like, where did that come from? Nobody else was in the child hall at that time. And I heard my grandmother talk about God spoke to her, but I mean, literally, I'm hearing this, right? I felt that way. And I said, well, what is my problem? And it was like, this voice answered me and said, your way of thinking is your problem. Okay. Well, let me ask another question. How should I think? We're talking about the how, right? And this inner thing said, think in line with my word. And at that point, I got some hope. Because it was like, first of all, I'm believing in my mind, I'm having a conversation with God himself. Mm-hmm. God cares. Somebody cares about me. And I went back to my room and picked up the Bible. And I said, I'm getting ready to read this Bible. They had the Gideon Bibles because I was in the hospital. I was sick, right? And I started reading and got down to Genesis 1:11. And it says, it's recorded, and God said, let every seed produce after its own kind. And the revelation kicked in again. Words and deeds are just like seed. They always produce after their own kind. At that point, I had a new revelation. I had a new way to live. Because what I was taught was, it's okay to do a little wrong. Just don't get caught. You can go to church. My granddad was on the front row of church every Sunday. But we so little. Right? So religion didn't stop nothing. It was just a gathering place to, I don't even know. The day I got baptized.
So when you got baptized?
I was 15 years old.
Okay.
Right? And I remember myself, one of my cousins, and a football player. He actually became, he played for the NFL. And we, all three of us got baptized that Sunday, came out the church, went down the street and smoked some weed. Mm-hmm. It meant nothing.
So are you saying that you expected a spontaneous transformation in that day?
No.
Like, how does that work?
What I'm saying is that I did not understand the purpose for the baptism. It was just an activity, something to do. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand the meaning behind it. I wasn't really taught. It said, hey, you got to get baptized so your sins will get washed away. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, cool. That's good. So I started, I got this revelation, this new operating system. Words and deeds are like seed. So I know seed, right? Because I grew up on a farm. And I know when we planted corn, we got corn, right? When we planted watermelons, we had watermelons. And so I understood that concept very vividly. And from that time on, Leslie, I became a student of this book called the Bible. Mm. Every day for 5 years, every weekday, it was Joyce Myers at 5:30, Creflo Dollar at 6 o'clock in the morning. Book, Bible, pen. I'm in it. You couldn't talk to me without hearing some scripture. I don't care what time, whatever kind of conversation we were having. At the end of that conversation, you was getting ready to get some scripture. Got married, man. My life changed. You know, I came out of that rehab, and you know, I met my ex-wife, and
So you got married again?
yes,
Okay.
got married again, and you know, this woman, I met her when I was actually at the homeless shelter before I went to the rehab, right? But she was, you know, she didn't judge me based on what I had or didn't have. We became friends, and then we started dating, and we got married. And when we started out, everything we had was in one room, both of us, in her grandmother's house. I'm 42 years old, 41 years old, right? And I'm living in her grandmother's house, and everything we both have is in one room. But I'm learning this Bible, right? And things started to change for me. I stopped using, for one thing. And there was dope in that house every day, but I was done. I had a new operating system.
So what was the shift? What was the change for you that caused you to stop?
Because that revelation of the drugs and the alcohol wasn't a problem. See, I could stay away from the drugs and alcohol, right? I could stay away from the people, places, and things. I didn't think there was nothing wrong with my thinking. Hell, I was smart. I was an A/B student in school, and I could put myself in situations that was like, I could get out of situations, right? That most people would crumble under, right? I could figure a way out quick. I was sharp. Nothing wrong with my thinking, but it was. And so I started studying scriptures and how to think. And, you know, I joined a church, right? And I felt love from people. People knew I was from New York. And, you know, I felt some love from some people in St. Louis, man. You know, St. Louis is dear to me. And I joined the church. I remember, you know, Bishop Ferguson at Abundant Life. And, you know, this man he was a school teacher. So he didn't do all this yelling and all this. He taught, right? And I was eating it up. I was soaking it in, man. I was in, right? And I was free, right? I was free from the drugs and alcohol. 5 years later, my ex and I are buying a $250,000 home.
Okay, when you say your ex, are you divorced now?
Oh, yeah.
From your second wife?
Yes.
Okay.
We're divorced.
Okay.
And so we had made progress. We had joined some ministries, and I had left a couple churches, right? The church I was just mentioning, Bishop Ferguson, he loved that guy, loved his teaching. But I wanted to meet with them to do some marriage counseling. And you know what they said?
Yeah,
your mate is not a member of the church, so we can't give you guys marriage counseling. Yeah. Then there was a deacon at the church who, you know, I tried to build some healthy relationships with men, and he was just one of those guys that I felt like he was the head deacon, and you know, I wanted to kind of get in that circle with him, and I called him for like a couple months. Every Saturday I called him. His wife even started making excuses like, Tim, I'm sorry, he hasn't called you back. And one day he was, you know, Bishop Ferguson was out and he was teaching, and he said, you know, I love you. I got up and walked out. My stomach flipped. Never went back. Right. Then joined another church, and they started building a building, and it's like, wait a minute, he wanted me to sign a contract to have money taken out of my check so they could build this building. I'm looking and I'm saying, wait a minute. This building ain't even full. What we need another building for? And left that church. These were big churches. Yeah, I had this yearning to be a part of a church family, right? Because remember, I'm still in the Word every day. I'm still listening to Creflo Dollar. I'm still listening to Joyce Myers, and I found this pastor, right? We had talked. We started talking. I met his sons. They were dancers. And I wanted to manage them. And they said, you got to talk to my dad. And come to find out their dad was a pastor. And I developed a relationship with him, started talking to him. I call him Dad today. Even bought a house in the same neighborhood he lived in. We started attending their church, and little small church, and we became a part of that family. My ex-wife and I, and when the marriage ended, the same people that said to me every day, every Sunday, they loved me and they were glad to see me, they kind of disconnected from me. Of course, Dad and his wife, Elder Kathy, they didn't disconnect from me, but it did change the dynamic a little bit of our relationship.
And so you're saying the people in the church disconnected from you?
Yes.
But the pastor himself, who you call father, didn't?
Yeah.
Okay.
We're still good friends. And matter of fact, he wrote the foreword in my book.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I love him. And even though they both practice religion, right? That's not what I love and respect about them. I love and respect who they are, their character, right? And that's what I look at today with people that I meet with. I don't try to control or judge anybody, really. And you brought up a very valid point, and I want to make this very clear that when I talk about the church and religion, the church, I don't call the church a problem. The church is not a problem. The church is a very significant part has always been, especially in the Black community. It's where people are married, babies are Christian, and it's also the last spot that you visit before you leave here, right? It's always been a very integral part of the community, right? And it was no different even on that front, right? So when I talk about church and religion, I want to make it very clear that for me, religion is the problem, not the church. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, when I made the decision, my marriage ended, I started looking at this religious thing, and I said, you know what? I've been in the church. I've been quoting the scriptures. I've been studying. I played an active part. I paid my tithes. I did all of these things, and my marriage failed. And, there's been decisions that I made that I prayed and I thought I heard from God, and it turned out not to be the right decision. And I don't know if I want to do this religious thing no more. It ain't working for me. It may be working for some other people. And so then I got introduced to this guy named Craig Beck, who wrote this book called Swallow the Happy Pill. And he was raised in a very religious home, but it was very dysfunctional. His dad was an alcoholic, and he talked about his transition from religion, right? And I'm going through this transition in my life, and I'm driving trucks at this point, right? And so I've got a lot of windshield time, a lot of time to think, and I'm listening. And then I ran across this guy named Dr. Ray Hagins. And Dr. Ray Hagins' story was very interesting to me because he was a man who had pastored for almost 20 years and denounced Christianity. And he came into knowledge of a different perspective of the Holy Trinity. It went beyond the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost back to ancient Kemet, right? Osiris, and there's another name. I get them kind of mixed up. And so I started saying, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not so all alone. There's other people who have experienced that maybe a question mark with religion. So I went to visit Dr. Ray Hagin. I went to his church, right? And I'm going to tell you, I started studying under him, watching his videos, and understanding how this thing called Christianity was kind of put together, and how, the Romans who had robbed the libraries of the Greeks created this Catholic Church, and all of the Protestant religions were birthed from this Catholicism philosophy, and how this Emperor Constantine called for this Nicene Council because the Romans had been conquering all of these territories, and they needed everybody to have the same belief system. So it's crazy. I don't know if you've done any research on the Council of Nicaea, but it was crazy. Like, they put all these different manuscripts on this table and said, in the morning when we come back, the ones that's left on the table, those are the ones we're going to put in the Bible. Yeah. And this deity of Christ was created and invented and all of that. Now, I said, okay, I'm no longer doing religion, right? And so I started studying under Dr. Ray Higgins, and then I got introduced to my mentor, Dr. Miles Monroe. And that's when the light bulb came on. He still mentors me from his grade. I'm going to always give him all the honor and respect that he is due, because he changed my life. Dr. Miles Monroe's message changed my life. So I understood the Bible from how it's written, not from how it was told, sold, and practiced under religion. And I started learning, I started studying. And Dr. Miles, I'm sure you're familiar with Dr. Miles, and he was no dumb man. He was well educated. He had 5 degrees. He wrote over 60 books. He read the Bible 39 times from front to back. He pastored for 35 years. He counseled third world governments. He traveled to over 90 countries. He was married to one wife his whole life. And he denounced Christianity. I'm good to go. I said, okay, hey, ain't nothing wrong with me, right? Because remember, all my life, the majority of my life, I'm trapped in drugs and alcohol. I think something wrong with me. You know what I mean? Nobody, my family said, you're so smart. Why don't you just quit? I asked myself that. But, I thought there was something wrong with me. I didn't understand that that's just how I'm wired. I'm like that today. But I know how to create healthy habits instead of unhealthy habits. We're all creatures of habit. I just take it to another level, right? I lay it all out on the line. I'm either in it to win it, or I'm in testing it. That's just my makeup.
I hear you, Phil. I hear you.
So that began me to start. I became a disciple of Dr. Miles Monroe. Do you understand discipleship? So.
But what do you mean by discipleship?
Okay. I was hoping you was going to ask me that. Remember I talked about baptism, and I didn't really understand. Well, I understand what baptism is today because of Dr. Miles. And baptism has to do with discipleship, right? It, going under the water had nothing to do with sin. It was becoming a follower of a master teacher. It means you went under the submission of a master teacher's teaching and his philosophy. All of them had disciples. Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, they call them students. They had baptisms. So baptism had nothing to do with going down a wet center. What was it? How y'all say that?
Get them y'all.
Going down a dry center, coming up a wet center.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. But anyway, when I heard Dr. Miles, and he talked about his story and how he was raised, he was Baptist-costal. Right? His dad was a Baptist, his mom was Pentecostal, so he was Baptist-costal. And, how he never heard anybody teach on the kingdom. And as I started studying under him and understanding the kingdom message, and that the Bible was not based on a religion, it's based on a kingdom philosophy. The Bible is about a king, a kingdom, and a royal family. And of course, I spent hours and hours, but I understand the Bible. I'm not saying I understand everything that's in the Bible, but I understand the basics, the foundation of it. And it just so happened, I had written a book, and before I even got introduced or came into contact with Dr. Miles, and the kingdom message in Matthew 6:33, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, right? Those are principles, right? Keys, as they're referred to in the Bible. Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I was promoting. So now it made sense how things came together. I'm now understanding the Bible because for some reason, Leslie, and we talked about this, I was raised in the church. So it was hard for me to move totally away from the church, right? It was the religion that wasn't working for me, not the church. I love being a part of the family, right? In my family growing up, there wasn't a lot of I love you, right? There was provision. There wasn't a lot of dysfunction. I never saw my dad yelling at my mom or putting his hands on my mom or anything crazy like that. There was no incest or nothing like that, but it wasn't, my grandfather's idea of I love you is here's $100. Never heard him say I love you.
So we would say today his love language, he thought your love language was gifts.
100%, right? And so now, I've come into the purpose of this presentation is, are there other people like me? Are there other people? Because let me tell you something, Leslie, I've been alienated when I walked away from Christianity, and I think this happens for a lot of people. They stay there because of the alienation. So many, the majority of people who look like you and I, 80% proclaim some type of religion in America. And I've had family members who don't even talk to me, right? I'm not in the norm, right? For our people, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to say it. You can write God. You can write God on a piece of paper and sell it. They'll buy it. Right? That's how much God is a part of our DNA, it seems like. So when I talk about kingdom and being responsible, and God is not doing it, right? Then it's my life is my responsibility. Your life is your responsibility. God ain't gonna fix it. Jesus ain't gonna fix it. Not in that regard. When I talk about Jesus fixing it, it's the instructions that are given, that Jesus gave biblically of how to fix our situations and circumstances. Why are you there?
No.
Come on.
Because I just had the analogy of making a cake.
Uh-huh.
So you can have the ingredients of how to make a cake, but that doesn't mean that someone is giving you a cake. You still have to together, follow the instructions to bake the cake.
Do you know that is, well, I got goosebumps, thank you. Do you know when they asked Jesus about marriage, divorce, I'm sorry, the Pharisees said, hey, Moses gave a decree of divorce. What do you say? He ignored the question. He said, it wasn't that way from the beginning. And what he was talking about, if you want to have a healthy marriage, you got to go back to what did a husband and wife look like from the beginning? He didn't see divorce as the problem. He saw the ingredients that went into the marriage as the problem. And it's still that way today. And so that's one of the biggest things for me in practicing spirituality and becoming a kingdom citizen, right? And understanding.
Wait a minute, let's back up. Because you just said something that I think you need to expound on.
Okay.
Practicing spirituality.
Okay.
Read about it.
Okay, so spirituality is that which gives life to an organism, spirit, right? God is a spirit. And what's happened in the spirit realm is, they say, from a biblical perspective, is more real than what we see in reality. So spiritual principles or spirituality is practicing principles, laws. A principle is a law. A principle is a fundamental law that guides our decision-making process, empowering us to live a lifestyle of integrity and morality. That's what practicing spirituality means to me. Mm-hmm. Practicing a set of principles that helps me maintain, my integrity and morality and be a productive member of society. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I think
Yeah. So I don't look for Jesus to fix it, right? I don't pray for magic tricks, right? I look at...
So let me ask this question. So do you believe in prayer?
Yes, I do. But I don't believe that prayer changes things. Mm-hmm. See, prayer for me doesn't change things. Prayer changes how I think about things, and it's up to me to change the things. Mm-hmm. Because you can get 100 people in this room right now and ask them all to pray to move that camera, and I promise you it ain't moving nowhere. I promise you. If don't somebody walk over there and touch that camera, it will not move. And they can pray in here 7 days, 24 hours a day, and if there's somebody sneak and move that camera, it ain't gonna move. You disagree? Prayer doesn't change things. It changes people. And prayer was meant to improve my conscious contact. Now, look, I'm not, again, if someone believes that is their right. That is their choice. Mm-hmm. I do not. I do not. Prayer was meant for me to improve my conscious contact with God because God lives in me. And I don't pray outward. I pray inward because that's where God is for me. Inside me. Not in the sky. And Leslie, that was the other thing.
So, go ahead.
Practicing spirituality, I don't have to formulate these imaginations in my head. Like I can remember when I was in religion and I'm praying and I'm thinking that there's this God that's sitting on this throne that's just listening to me, and I'm wondering what he's looked like and what his expression is on his face, and if I'm approaching the throne. I don't have to do none of that.
Nothing.
None of that. So go ahead, what was your question?
I think I was going to ask you or make the statement that it sounds like, you're kind of transitioning more into kingdom and defining more like really what is kingdom, so people really understand the difference between religion and kingdom as you talk about it.
Okay. Kingdom is a government. Well, a kingdom is a country. Mm-hmm. You want me to unpack this thing?
Yes, please do.
Okay. So God is referred to as a king. Mm-hmm. David called God a king. And we've heard the scripture, King of Kings. Jesus was a king, right? A king is different from a president. Mm-hmm. A king is not voted into power. A king is born into power. Mm-hmm. A king, whatever a king says is law. So a kingdom, the word is two parts, king and dom. So it's king, dominion. Dominion is a territory. Dom is a territory. So it's a king's authority over a territory. So from a biblical perspective, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But the heavens is an invisible country. It's a territory. Mm-hmm. And every country is regulated by government. So the government that regulates the invisible country, called the kingdom of heaven, is called the kingdom of God. Mm-hmm. You'll find those terms used interchangeably in the New Testament. Kingdom of heaven, kingdom of God. Because when a king shows up, the whole government shows up. You remember Coming to America? King Johnny, right? So a kingdom is quite different from a religion. Mm-hmm. In religion is based on democracy, right? Democracy was created by the Greeks, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. And it was called democrata. And here's what they believed. They believed that the gods chose who would be a leader and who would be a slave based on endowment. If you had fair skin, blonde hair, blue eyes, and a pointed nose, you were chosen to be a god. If you had brown skin, kinky hair, a big nose, brown eyes, the gods chose you to be a slave. This is what these folks believe. This is the philosophy of democracy. And religion is based on that. If you look at religion now, it's birthed out of what I call a sectarian spirit. And that means we are distinct. We're different. We're different from you. And there's so many sectarian spirits. You got Baptists and Methodists and Pentecostal and Church of God in Christ, and all of those are divisions. That was not God's original idea. It never was.
Okay.
And so when you ask the difference between a kingdom and religion, kingdoms function differently. Whatever king says is law. There's no vote. If God says homosexuality is an abomination, there's no vote on it. That's what it is. Now, I'm not judging people about their lifestyle. I'm just saying from a biblical perspective of what kingdom is. Every person has the right to choose what they want, right? But what's another good example? Divorce was not an original idea, right? But man has made provisions for that. And religion is a provision.
So I'm paraphrasing a little bit, Tim.
Okay.
But if you were to say that, Jesus isn't going to do anything else for us, God isn't doing anything for us, clarify a little bit. What do you mean by that?
So what I mean is that what I've come to accept to believe is that I'm responsible for what happens in my life. And that there's no magic tricks. The popular belief is that, and I don't even understand it, how God is in control of everything, but yet I was created with free will, right? What I have come to believe and accept.
So you don't think those two things can coexist?
I do not.
Huh, okay.
Control and free will, I do not. Not in the same space.
Then how do you keep from having chaos?
Because I follow the laws.
No, not you. How does the world, the nation, the countries, the communities exist?
Law. Law is the foundation of creation.
Okay, so there is a law that basically governs the people holistically. But within that, individually, we have free will to choose whether or not to obey that law.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So, but those laws don't control us because we can violate that law at any given time. We have free will to do so. So they don't control us, right? And so what I have learned and come to accept is that the Bible is a book of instructions, right? We've heard that basic instructions before leaving Earth. So what I do is if there's a situation or circumstance that I'm faced with, I want to go to the instruction, the manual. I call the Bible a manual. You know the definition of a manual?
What?
It's broken up into two words. Man, man, o. Man means maker, o means mind. So it's the manufacturer's mind. Maker's mind is manual. Anytime you get a product, you open it up, there's a manual written by the manufacturer that tells us the laws of that product, what to do, what not to do. And there's also a warranty and a guarantee in that manual. That's what the Bible is. It's a book of law. It's actually called the book of law. But because I prayed so many times for God to take the drugs and alcohol away from me. I saw my Nana pray, tears in her eyes night and day, for God to deliver me from drugs and alcohol. But do you know when I got delivered from drugs and alcohol?
When you decide?
When I decided not to pick that pipe back up again, right? And because that's my free will. That's why when we see in the Bible, Jesus would ask people, what would you have me do for you? Because he couldn't overrule their will. That's why he taught in a parabolic language, right? Because nothing becomes yours until you discover it, right? And so, yes, I totally disagree with, for me, the philosophy of God's going to do this. And I see this all the time on social media. And I'm like, why are you lying to these people? Because you don't know that. You don't know what God's going to do. You ain't got a clue. And for real, God is done. I'm finished. The laws are in motion, right? How can this universe, 600 million galaxies, operate so precisely on a timing that we can send a rocket to the moon, but God operates haphazardly? He's going to do something for you that he ain't going to do for me. I don't believe that.
Looking.
Does that answer the question?
It begins to, yeah.
It begins to. So what part of it is not clear? Because I want to make sure, and you know, I really appreciate, again, hey, dog, let me tell y'all something. This is my friend right here, all right? She is such a beautiful spirit. And what I love about our friendship and our relationship is that, not like that, but our friendship is that even though we may have different understandings about things, it doesn't stop us from being friends. It doesn't stop us from being able to have intelligent, mature conversations. We can agree to disagree, right? And we work to help each other, right? She is helping me today. You know, I asked her to help me with this, do this interview, and she agreed to help me with it. And I'm so grateful for the friendship that we share. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even say that we differ so much in our understanding of what we're talking about. I think it's more just the how of it, how we may approach it, how we may interpret certain things, more of the how than the what it is that we're doing.
You think so?
I do.
I'm going to tell you why. Okay. I think we differ. Because you identify as a Christian.
Why didn't you say that?
Do you?
No, why didn't you say that?
I thought you. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. I just.
But we're friends. How well do you know your friends?
Right.
Now, I will say, in all honesty, I have identified as a Christian in the past. I have.
I know. I've seen that somewhere. Right? But that's neither here nor there. Because, you know what? At the end of the day, you know, we have a friendship. And, you know, I was saying before the shoot, I really kind of applaud you. I kind of look up to you because I appreciate the work you do. I guess we resonate, you know, when they talk about being equally yoked, right? That is nothing spooky about that. It's people who share common interests. We share a common interest. Like, it's not like I'm a truck driver and you are a profession in the medical field, right? We both have a sincere passion of wanting to help people deal with dilemmas, help people to make decisions to live a higher quality of life, help them to understand situations or circumstances so that they can, you know, move forward in their life. That's what I live for. I've accepted that. That is my calling, right? I love that. I appreciate that. I can do a lot of different things, but that's what I love to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And I kind of, just to piggyback on that, what I like to say is I help people to lead, love, and live better through the power of their personal choice.
Okay.
And so, to your point, we're both in this to help people. Yeah, we're both in this space to help people. And I, you know, pretty much focus more on the inner healing piece and aspect of it and the wholeness of the individual. But yeah, absolutely. I think what we're doing, I believe God has us all here for a reason and a purpose. And
100%.
All of that is needed. And so when we all collaborate and work toward our purpose, then we're going to benefit the other people around us.
Absolutely.
Gifts are for other people, not for ourselves. And so, you know, if that's our focus and our intention, I think we'll get there. So.
Absolutely, 100%. That's, you know, we agree on that. And now, you know, when it comes to biblically speaking, when God created Adam, all of mankind was in Adam, right? And so we were created from the beginning, right? And Eve came along and said, let them be fruitful and multiply, because that was the way to get all no. Eve, did I say you said that? Oh, no. The scripture says, let us create Eve, right? No, the scripture says, let them be fruitful and multiply. This is after the creation of Eve, right? And it was to get the other men out of Adam. So we were created before the foundations of the world, right? And we were created for a specific reason, to bring a gift, as you said, into our generation. I think a part of my gift is also to help eradicate bad information or inaccurate information, because our future generations deserve to be told the truth. I had a resentment against my mom and dad for a long time, right? I did. Not that I didn't love them, not that they didn't love me. I just didn't understand why there were some things that I wasn't taught growing up. And what I had to come to understand is that they gave me the best that they could give me. Yep. They did. And man, I almost choked up. My dad, passed away last November, and I was gonna go to, I had to speak. I'm a speaker, right? So I was gonna speak at his funeral. I don't even really like funerals, but it's my dad. And there was a lot of people coming in town, and I had put together this speech lesson. I was gonna drop it like it was hot. They ain't heard me speak. Well, I'm getting ready to do this deal, right? I got up there and lost it. My mom had to come and get me. I lost it. My emotions, I had never experienced that before. I could not pull my emotions back, man, because the resentment that I had for my dad turned into respect to what you do. The inner healing, the work that I've done. I'm coming up on 20 years, man. April the 30th will be 20 years free from active addiction, right? Because I've done that work, and I continue to do that work. It's not like I've arrived yet, and I'm still learning. But I can share some experience, strength, and hope with other people, right? So that, those who are dealing with similar dilemmas, let's face it. You see on social media now, the younger generations, they are not subscribing to religion. Right, and it can I know what it's like to be caught up in that middle space of, man, I don't want to dishonor my mom and dad, but what am I supposed to do? What is the alternative, right? I read this Bible, and I want to believe this, but it ain't making no sense, right? So what am I supposed to do?
So let me ask this question though, because it doesn't make sense, does it mean that it's still not valid?
That doesn't mean that it's not valid, but if it doesn't make sense, you can't use it. It's useless.
That's true.
Yeah. So why?
It's a lack of understanding.
Yeah. So why get it? Right.
It's a lack of understanding.
Right. But see, a lot of what's being taught in the Bible is inaccurate. It's taught from okay. As a human being, we have precepts, right? David mentioned precepts 15 times in the book of Psalms. Lord, let me know your precepts. A precept is a thought before a thought. That is what we get from other people, right? A precept.
And today in my world, people would call that metacognition, but okay.
Metacognition, okay. So now, these precepts, once it's conceived, becomes a concept, right? So these precepts that are conceived become concepts. These concepts, as they formulate, create our belief system. And our belief system...
But our belief system is developed way before then.
Okay.
But to your point, we get to a point where we come into new information, and it creates what we call a dissonance.
Right.
Right? And then we have a choice to make. Are we going to choose...
Well, let me ask you this. Okay. So we have two minds. We have a conscious and a subconscious, right? Our conscious mind is fed by our senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch. And it goes across these senses. The same information goes across these senses a number of times and then gets downloaded to our subconscious. What happens in our subconscious is automatic, like breathing, heart rate, blinking of eyes. When something gets downloaded into our subconscious, it takes almost an act of God to get it out of it. So what happens when we're programmed with the wrong understanding, and then some truth comes, because it's in opposition to what's there, it gets rejected. That's why it's vital to get the right precepts. Because how we see things, how we think about things, is more important than what we see and what we hear. Because what we see and what we hear gets filtered through our belief system.
Absolutely.
So if our belief system is wrong, like I was told, look, it's okay to do a little wrong, just don't get caught. That was my belief system.
And so you believe that because that's what you saw.
That's what I was told.
So, no, it's not just what you were told.
But I saw it. Yes.
Because most of what we learn is through observation, not what we're taught.
I saw it too. Yeah.
But, right. And what we believe first and most is what we live out.
Right.
Because I'm sure that you were probably told some things that were consistent with the Bible, but because they weren't lived out, what you saw overrode what you were told.
Yeah, so I did what I felt like.
Right. That's why I say, our belief system is actually developed way before we have any authority over our own life.
I agree with that 100%.
Right.
It is developed. And then it creates a philosophy. And we live out of our philosophy. To be in love with my thoughts. Philo means love. Philosophy means thoughts. So that's what I live out of, my own thoughts.
And 85% of our thoughts are negative. And they're just recurring thoughts when we foolish.
And that's why when you tell a child you're born in sin, when you tell a child you're going to hell, when a child is created or presented with those type of fear tactics, that is a part of religion, not the kingdom. That's not the king's kids are taught from here. They're kings, right? A king, Prince Charles and the maids grew up in the same house, but Prince Charles was taught to differently. Because now he's gonna behave differently. When we see
that in our country.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah,
100%. And so that's part of my mission, is to help people who may be, at that point where I was with this transition, right? Because it's not mandatory to practice religion and be successful. It's not, right? And I tell people that very vividly, very candidly. I stand on that. I know people who live happy, healthy, and successful lives, and they do not practice a religion. Right?
Some people would say that's because the word God says that God raised on the just and the unjust. It doesn't matter. As long as you follow principles.
Hello. That's it.
Right. But what I'm saying to you, though, is, as it relates to just a conversation about religion and the Bible and kingdom, is that, and this is what a lot of people in our community have an issue with too sometimes, is that you can take the words in the Bible and misrepresent the meaning for your own purpose, which is how we got here as slaves.
That's
and the theology that came up with that.
Traditions and rituals.
Right.
Yeah. And even more so, and I think you and I had this conversation where we talked about how, because people haven't studied, right, and gained an understanding, some of the stuff that people teach don't make no sense. It just don't make no sense, right?
It's true.
And so if you don't practice the instruction the correct way, you can't get the right results. We talked about ingredients. Well, a cookbook is a great example of goal setting, because you have the ingredients and then you have the process. Mix this here and then cook it for this. So you can have the right ingredients, but the wrong process. You can have the right process and the wrong ingredients, and you're still not going to get the end result. I use this example when I talk about eradicating wrong information. In the book of Joshua 1:8, we talked about this. Joshua 1:8, right? You know the story. Joshua, Moses had led the Israelites out of Egypt, and they got over in the wilderness, and Moses did something that God told him not to do, as the story is told. And God called Joshua and said, I want you to take my people in the promised land. And Joshua was like, well, how am I going to do that? Right? And he said, Joshua 1:8, he said, Joshua, if you will meditate in this book of the law day and night and observe to do according to all that is written therein, then you, Joshua, will make your way prosperous and you will have good success. He didn't say he was going to do it. He said Joshua would. So the key word, one of the key words in that verse is meditate. I've asked hundreds of people, Leslie, hundreds, how do you meditate? You know the number one answer I get?
Where's that?
Is you sit there and you just being quiet, the silence, and you just...
What is the word?
The word was translated from the Greek word Hagaw, Hagaw, and it means to mutter, to say the same thing over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. Because remember, we got to get it down into that subconscious. Because faith comes by what? Hearing. So if I'm following, if I'm sincere with all my heart, I'm wanting to follow this instruction, and I sit there and I think hard, long, hard. I'm not going to get the end result because that's not following the instruction. That's like putting a cake in the oven and leaving it on 0 degrees. It ain't going to bake. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of stuff we gotta understand, like mustard seed faith.
Center.
You know, we talked about mustard seed faith, and you don't believe me. You don't trust me on that one, do you?
No, what did you say? Let's talk about that.
So what have we always been told about mustard seed faith?
What has people been told?
No, I'm asking you.
I don't know what everybody's been told.
Have you ever heard somebody say you just got to have the faith the size of a mustard seed?
Yes.
Okay, that's what we've been told, right? And that's incorrect.
Okay.
That's not correct.
Well, what do you mean when you say that's not correct? Because we did have this conversation, and just like I made this statement a second ago, go ahead. It's about interpretation. Go ahead.
Okay, so no, it's about what it says. When you go and look at that,
it said it. Okay, this is the thing. This is the difference, though. You and I can read the same thing,
mm-hmm.
but the meaning you get from it can be different from the meaning No.
Oh, yeah.
You're not listening. I already formulated what you're going to say.
No. I'm listening.
So, two people can read the same thing, and based on their understanding of the words on the paper, they're going to have an interpretation.
Okay.
That they apply to their life. You're going to have an interpretation that you apply to your life based on your understanding of the words on the paper. So it doesn't mean that either one of those is what was intended by the author.
Okay, so the words on the paper. See, I don't do that. I don't do interpretation.
You absolutely do.
No,
How do you come to any understanding otherwise?
I read it, literally. It says, for eggs, I don't need interpretation.
Hold up. Let's be practical. Oh. This is what I mean by practicality.
Okay.
So they're different. They're different. What?
Go ahead, because I want to get back to the words you said.
Well, let's go there first.
Okay. The word size is not used in the scripture. That parable.
What translation?
King James.
Right.
Right.
Specify that because it is used in a different translation.
It is.
But if you're right.
Okay. You're absolutely correct. So in the King James, which is the most widely acceptable version, it's not used. Mm-hmm. That parable is mentioned 5 times. As a grain, like a grain. And now, I'm going to tell you something. I'm 60 years old. To tell me to have the faith the size of something that's microscopic, my brain can't do nothing with that. And I've been there for 60 years. It makes no sense.
Our finite mind, it doesn't make any sense.
But guess what? When I went and done the research, it wasn't talking about. Yeah. I did the research.
So you didn't just read it and understand it. You had to research.
I did.
That's what I was saying. That's the point.
Chris, is that the... Hey! Hey! I need some help, man.
Well, go ahead. So we have talked about a lot of things
Yes.
related to religion and kingdom, and it's been a great conversation.
Yes.
So I want to know, what is it that, why is it that you want to convey the kingdom message, and who do you want to convey it to?
Okay. So, I know everybody may not be receptive to the kingdom message, but for individuals who are looking for some direction with dilemmas that they may be facing, or for someone who is, who has question marks about religion. Okay, well, I want to practice this. I want to believe in it, but I don't know how to believe in this Bible. I've been raised all my life reading this book. I can't just walk away from this, or I don't want to be like the woke folk, because they just ain't nothing true in it, right? Here's a different understanding for those individuals who may be in that transition, right? We see a lot of young people on social media are now reading this like line for line, right? I saw this lady, she said, she talking about how God wrestled with Jacob. And she was like, wait a minute, I don't understand. This ain't making sense. So for individuals like that. And then why? Because that was the instruction the directive that Jesus gave in Matthew 10:7. As you go proclaim this message. He said it again in Luke 2:9. As you go proclaim this message, the kingdom. Because that's what saved my life, is the kingdom. Really, the kingdom message represents self-government. That's why Jesus says seek that first. Not salvation, not the blood, not the cross, not even me. Seek first the kingdom. That's why we can see people who have these titles, who practice these programs, doing some nasty power bottom stuff and getting swallowed up.
Secrets.
Right? And so, because... So anyway, Bishop Eddie Long, right? You know him, right? Because he didn't practice the kingdom message, right? Self-government. God never created penitentiaries and judges and lawyers and all of that kind of stuff, right? We were supposed to be self-governed, dominion, kingdom, authority over our own self. We were supposed to use the same government that regulates the kingdom of heaven on earth as it is in heaven, right? And so I want to give people share with people, we are responsible. This is what, we are responsible for our lives. We are responsible for our marriages. We are responsible for our families being successful, not by magic tricks, but by the principles that's written, the principles of the kingdom. I think that, matter of fact, I know that when individuals look at it like this, two individuals who come together, who both have adopted the kingdom philosophy, and they practice these principles of the kingdom, honesty and hope and faith and all the other principles, and these two people come together and they create a marriage that now functions by these principles, that now produces a family that functions by these principles, that now produce communities that function by these principles. Now we'll have a whole society and we'll get different results. Guaranteed. 20 years clean. It's not by magic. It's not osmosis. It's by practicing these principles. Kingdom message.
So what is it you want to accomplish in this as we wrap up?
Okay, so and what I really wanted to do, Leslie, is I wanted people to see and hear that I do believe in God. Right. That I'm not against the church.
Thank you.
That there is an alternative way to understand what's written in Scripture, right? That it's okay to not follow the mainstream. you don't have to proclaim a denomination. How could I say this? Just because I don't proclaim a denomination doesn't mean I don't believe in God. Mm-hmm. And guess what? The other thing is, we don't have to necessarily agree on everything. Our understandings can be different, but we can still operate in unity. We can still operate in love, man. Just because you're Baptist and you're Pentecostal and you're Church of God in Christ, we don't have to have that division. I'll just share this with you, right? When I stepped out of, and I made the transition, I went back to St. Louis and I stood at the corner, two of the churches I used to go to. I stood at that corner and there were 7 churches. You could see 7 churches from that one corner, 7. And I thought about, I'm a business person. What if those pastors, took 5 of those buildings and shut them down? Took 2 of those buildings and used 2 of those buildings. If each one of those churches cost or took in $10,000 a month, they would save $50,000. And they take that $50,000 and start buying homes for young couples getting started and give them interest loans or set up a school or do something, right? But we can do that because that's part of the problem is unity. There have been, and I'm wrapping this up, there have been bishops and pastors and people with titles who have deleted me and blocked me, right? My mission was never to offend people. Never. My heart is to enlighten people. Look at things from a different perspective because that's what I had to do to get some different results in my life. I could not continue to practice the same thing and get different results. And so that is part of, what my purpose for doing this is to kind of share my story. I want people to understand who I am, give people some hope that there is a different way. Mm-hmm. Because people who are in turmoil, they typically, when they're in pain, turn to different devices, medication, activities to eliminate their pain, and a lot of times that leads to destruction. So ultimately, my goal is to help people the same thing that you do. Live a lifestyle of inner peace, for common unity, for happy and healthier and safer communities in which to live, work, and play.
Beautiful. Love it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. We're on this path together, man.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Sharing your story.
Yeah.